Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mental Golf Show, where we discuss all things golf psychology to help avid golfers improve their game. As always, I'm your host, Josh Nichols. I'm a golf psychology coach, and I've been playing competitive amateur golf for over 20 years. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about my pre-shot routine and how it can hopefully help you dial in your pre-shot routine. I'm confident you're going to leave this episode with a better understanding of what a pre-shot routine is for and the different components that most experts do that you should probably be doing in order for you to play your best. But before we get into today's episode, I want to say thank you to the family at the Divot Board for their continued support of the Mental Golf Show. They've been a sponsor of the show for a long time now, and I am super happy for that because I absolutely love my Divot Board. I could spend a very, very long time talking about the Divot Board and how awesome it is, and how valuable the instant feedback is, and how good the actual real turf feel is. I could talk about those things for a long time, but something I talked about actually in last week's episode that I think bears mentioning again is the main barrier to entry that people have for getting the Divot Board. And yes, the Divot Board is amazing. Yes, it feels good. Yes, the neurological and psychological benefits of it are numerous. But people ask me, and to be very transparent, how do you make up for the difference in height of the Divot Board? It's not flush with the ground when it's in its normal form, right? It's probably like an inch off the ground. And that's valuable. That thickness is really important because it helps it feel really good. It helps its durability, and it helps it kind of stay in place on the ground. But a little bit of a hack that not everyone knows about is every Divot Board comes with a replacement pad that's in it, right? So there's the whole big rectangle, but then within that rectangle is the main part of the Divot Board with the sequins and stuff. And you can take that part out and you can lay that one right on the ground. And now instead of being an inch thick, it's, half a centimeter thick or something, or a few millimeters thick. Again, I don't see a problem with the added height of the Divot Board. I might choke up a little bit on my club. It's not a big deal to me. It just gives me an idea of what the path of the club is doing, roughly where am I making ground contact. It's the height of the actual product is not that big of a deal to me. But if it is to you, you can do that. You could also just straight up buy a replacement pad straight from the website. You don't have to buy the entire product. I love Divot Board. You should try a Divot Board. It's awesome. The instant feedback is so valuable to me because as soon as you hit a shot, you know that it wasn't good. That's really, really important. Error feedback is extremely important for practice. It makes practice tougher. Yes, practice, we want it to be easy. We want it to feel easy, but you're not going to get better by making your practice feel easier. So if you want to go get a Divot Board, you can go to divotboard.com/mentalgolfshow, divotboard.com/mentalgolfshow. There's no the, it's just Mental Golf Show. And when you go to checkout, use the offer code MENTALGOLF10. That's MENTALGOLF10. And you'll get 10% off of your Divot Board order. It's a great way to support the show, but it's also one of the best ways that you can support your own golf improvement. Okay, enough about that. Without further ado, let's get into talking about the pre-shot routine. So, the pre-shot routine. It's one of the most common things that I hear players want to know more about. They come to me, and one of the first things that they always ask me is, I want to have a more consistent pre-shot routine. And some of them just want a pre-shot routine. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're just kind of clueless of what you do before the ball. You just kind of get up and hit it without much thought. But what I think this usually comes down to for players is wanting to feel the same on every shot. But I hate to burst the bubble right at the top, but you're not going to feel the same before and during every golf shot. It's just not how reality works. Some shots are strategically simple. A nice, smooth driving range 8-iron swing, playing by yourself on a nice day. And some shots are actually easy shots, like a straightforward chip off a good lie. But then some shots are complex and have a tight margin for error. So expecting to feel the same on every shot, that's an unrealistic expectation. And not only is it unrealistic, it can actually have harmful effects on your game. When you expect things to be smooth and easy, but they turn out to be chaotic and difficult, you're thrown off more than if you had had no expectations of how it should feel. And being thrown off like that can be a problem when you're about to hit a difficult shot in a chaotic situation. So let's set aside the expectation to feel the same on every shot. So then, what's a pre-shot routine for, if not to feel the same on every shot? Well, in my experience and what I've learned about expert performance in different scientific research and stuff like that, it's basically to simplify something that's complex in an effort to be more present. Now, the research on expert golfers shows that they are better at sifting through relevant and non-relevant info and leaving behind the non-relevant stuff and keeping the relevant stuff. And also they have less brain activity in certain regions of the brain compared to novices. Now, this study that I'm referencing, they compared a group of LPGA Tour players, like, best players in the world. I think it was a set of players that played in one of the U.S. Opens, and they compared those players with handicaps from the mid-20s to the mid-30s. So maybe you fall in that range of novice type of golfer, but it's safe to say that there's a big difference between these players skill-wise. So I think it's a good comparison to see the drastic differences, the drastic brain differences. So we'll get to more details on that later, but what does it mean to simply simplify complex things and to sift through non-relevant info, and how can you do it? What does that mean? How can you do it? So let's work through my own pre-shot routine and see if we can learn step by step how we can simplify things. And I might even learn something that needs to change for myself in this process. I'm under no illusion that everything I do is perfect. So maybe I'll find something to change here. So my pre-shot routine comes down to 3 main steps as it is now: picking a target, pre-accepting the results, and having a swing feel. Now remember, we're trying to simplify complex things and be able to take in all the info and get rid of irrelevant info and keep only the relevant stuff, which naturally starts with strategy and target selection. So when I'm picking a target, I don't just look at the target. I take in the whole scene in front of me. I scan from left to right everything that's going on, and I'm certainly not trying to avoid looking at problem areas to try to keep them out of my brain so that I don't hit it there, kind of in this jinxy kind of voodoo way. I don't feel that way. That's not important to me, and I think that's actually can be harmful to your game. But once I've taken in the entire scene in front of me, I start the discarding of non-relevant info process. Now, I know I don't want to hit it there, and there, so I can mentally discard those things. But then there are areas where I don't want to hit it that are still relevant info. For instance, a front bunker that's only 4 yards short of a tucked front pin, that's definitely relevant in this scenario. Or maybe it's a hazard that cuts in on the left side of the fairway, or OB that's only 10 yards over the green. This is all relevant info that informs my target choice. So once I've taken this next layer of more refined info of where not to hit it, it naturally leaves where do I want to hit it. Based on all of the info so far, I can narrow down to an actual target line and number. Now, while I'm doing all of this, I'm also taking into account the lie, the slope, the wind, the temperature, and anything else environment related to further inform the target line and number, which ultimately leaves me with the very whittled down decision of what to hit and where I want to hit it. Now, this process, I've gone from a vast open picture of the entire landscape down to the spots where I don't want to miss, and then down ultimately to my exact target. I've taken this very complex set of variables and simplified it down to one single target line and number. Now remember, the research shows that this is a key trait of an expert's pre-shot routine, sifting through info and discarding non-relevant info and keeping only what's relevant. And ultimately, the only thing that's relevant is where do I want to hit it? Now, when I spell it out like this, it sounds like a lot of thinking. It sounds like a ton of information going through my brain. But something else the research shows is that experts exert less mental energy on this process than novices. Even though experts tend to sift through all of this info and take in all of this info, they're actually exerting less mental energy on this process. And this is probably due to me keeping the same basic pre-shot routine for the better part of the last decade. So it has become a very natural process to sift through all of this info. The target selection part probably takes me 10 to 20 seconds. So I've chosen my target. Now it's time for things to start turning more psychological. So step 2 of my pre-shot routine is to pre-accept the results. Now this has varied in execution over the last decade, but it has always ended up in the same place. To be able to genuinely say, this ball can go anywhere and I'll be okay. Now, I've stated specific lines in my head, like pick a target, let it rip, accept the results. You may have heard me say that phrase before. That's the phrase that I was using during my run to the finals of the U.S. Mid-Amateur, and it has more recently moved to a less tangible or audible form to more of a feeling. But this is somewhere I could probably improve if we're talking about things that I'm learning through this of ways that I can improve. Actively reminding myself that I accept any result here, that's a great exercise on a shot-by-shot basis. So I could probably take that from that intangible just feeling to let's state this out loud. Let's remind myself in very, very clear terms, I pre-accept this result. So why? Why do we pre-accept the results? What does this do? Now, if our theme for this from the research is to simplify something that's complex and reducing brain activity, pre-accepting the result has a lot to do with this. When you don't pre-accept the result, aka a bad result would be detrimental and it would be unacceptable to you, then this shot just got a lot more complex and your brain is going to be in overdrive. So now you have sitting in your mind all of the places you don't want to go, and you're holding all of that there throughout the entire shot. And the limbic system of the brain, to get neurological here, the limbic system of the brain, it is the highly reflexive area of your brain in charge of helping you survive a threat. That part gets engaged when certain results are unacceptable. And this is going to lead to those short, quick, guidey swings that we all hate. Your brain is essentially interpreting these places you don't want to hit and keeping them all in mind and saying, that's unacceptable. We can't do that. Don't go there. We need to avoid that. So then it's basically a threat to your brain. Your brain interprets these things as a threat. So your limbic system is turned on and your mind is just chugging on where not to hit it. So this is where pre-acceptance comes in. Pre-accepting the result is you telling yourself all of those other bad areas, they aren't bad at all. They would just be different results of this shot, and it would ultimately be okay. So maybe that's based on your belief in your ability to grind and scramble your way out of that result, or maybe that pre-acceptance is based on just being grateful to be out here. You know, gratefulness, I think, is an awesome source of pre-acceptance because it doesn't matter where the ball goes. I'm just happy to be out here. I think that's a very credible way to say it. You know, if you have been injured for months and you haven't played golf in a long time and you're finally out there, you're probably not too worried about results. You're probably just happy to be out there. So you kind of free up and just swing. And often you play well the first time that you're back on the golf course. I don't know if that's your experience. It's certainly my experience. But for me, my pre-acceptance is based on a combo of both of these. When I'm at my best, I have a bigger picture perspective that ultimately golf, let alone this individual shot, does not define me. This shot can go anywhere and I will ultimately be okay. I might not literally say those things to myself. Again, that's probably somewhere I can improve, but it's just this deeper feeling. It's this deep, pervasive feeling and belief that I have. But you may need to explicitly remind yourself of the reasons to pre-accept the result. And I might need to do that as well, because sometimes I vary on how strong that belief is in my mind. And I veer off that path and I get too consumed in results. So I should probably maybe reenact the clear statement of why is pre-accepting this shot possible? How can I pre-accept this shot? Why do I play golf? What is this all for anyway? Right? Those things, that deeper belief and bigger picture perspective, that can help to have that pre-acceptance. So why do we do this? This helps our pre-shot routine be more effective because we're turning down the volume of that limbic area. And instead, we're engaging the what's called neocortical area, which, again, we're getting neurological here. The limbic area is that kind of fight or flight, threat survival area, but the neocortical area, you might have heard of the prefrontal cortex, that is the area dedicated to kind of more slow, thoughtful, methodical thinking. That's the part of your brain that's turned on, like when you're meditating or when you're doing some kind of deep breathing, or you're paying attention, or your mind is present. That part of your brain is turned on and leads to that kind of more thoughtful state. Now, naturally, this should help you make better swings, make smoother swings, and doing it more freely because you're not in that threat survival mode. So the first two steps that we've gone through is I've chosen a target and I've pre-accepted the result. Now, third step is I get my swing feel. Now, this one is probably the most individualized of all these things. It's the most preferential. It's the thing maybe is most unique to me. I like having a swing feeling. You might like to have more of a concrete technical thought. You might like to keep it target oriented. Maybe your technical thought is something like take it back inside, or all you're thinking about is the left side of that tree or the right side of the green, something like that. But for me, my swing feel, that's what I go to right before I step into the shot. And right now, at the time of recording this, my swing feel is push draw, right? So I'm trying to envision aiming directly at maybe an alignment rod, and I'm trying to have the feeling of pushing it to start right of that alignment rod. I'm a right-handed golfer, so I'm trying to start right of that alignment rod and then draw it back. So it's more of a feel. Now, it might not actually be very accurate to call it a swing feel, because swing feel makes it sound like maybe more technical than it really is. Maybe calling it a shot feel or a task feel, right? I'm trying to accomplish a task because I'm specifically trying not to have a technical thought. Remember, experts keep things simple and as quiet as possible, not complex and cluttered. Technical thoughts over the ball have historically felt very noisy to me. Now, having more of a shot to accomplish keeps me more task and target focused. And this is helpful for me to simplify things, and maybe that could be helpful for you too. So, something not a lot of people talk about when it comes to the pre-shot routine is that the pre-shot routine can and should be practiced. The last thing you want to do is to get out on the course and just hope you remember what you should be doing, or getting in your head about all the steps and you're over the ball thinking about all the details of the pre-shot routine that you're supposed to be doing and checking boxes and all these things. I know I've had those conversations with players of, here's a list of things that I need to do in my pre-shot routine. I'm just going to check all these boxes. And on the golf course is not the time to be doing that. So when you're doing all that, you tell me if that's going to lead to things being simpler and quieter. Remember, that's kind of what the research shows that experts do. They simplify things and they make things kind of overall quieter in their head. Having boxes to check while you're trying to hit a golf shot, that's not a great way to simplify things and make things quiet. Now, you can practice your pre-shot routine. I firmly believe that, and you should be practicing your pre-shot routine. But how? How can you practice your pre-shot routine? Well, first, you need to practice, right? Hopefully, if you're listening to this, then that's already a given for you. But I think the way to practice your pre-shot routine is to simply go through your routine before every ball that you hit in practice. Now, this is what I believe set me apart and might actually still be setting me apart from my peers, is my discipline to go through my pre-shot routine over and over and over again in my practice. It's incredibly boring and it can be miserable, and I just want to speed things along and I just want to hit the next ball. But everything that I've learned shows that being more methodical, practicing this routine is more helpful. So you don't have to do it on every single ball while you're practicing. There is a time for what you could call rake and hit practice, where you're just standing there, hit a ball, rake one over, hit a ball, rake one over. But I believe what I've learned, experienced, and seen in research is there needs to be dedicated times during practice where you're doing your full routine before shots, where you're kind of simulating game time, right? So this might require some planning. And you've probably heard me talk about it before, and this I don't want to make this an ad, but I do sell a custom weekly practice plan. You fill out a form, and I'll hand build it for you. And if you want to know more about it, the link is in the show notes of this episode. But I believe you can do this yourself. You don't need me to do it for you. You can do this yourself. All you have to do is map out the time that you'll have for practice, and I think roughly cut your time in half. One half to kind of rake and hit practice, kind of standing still, doing the same thing over and over. And then one half for routine practice, you could call it. And that kind of cutting it in half, that'll probably take you 70% of the way there, which is way more than almost anyone else is doing. I challenge you to just watch people on the range. How many of those other golfers step back between shots? Just watch them. It's like their feet are planted in concrete, and they just hit a ball, rake, and over and over and over again, and then until they're frustrated or they're exhausted and they have to take a drink of water. So I don't want you to be like that. I at least want you to have some time for that, but then some time for routine practice. Now, you can go into a lot more detail and really break things down, which is what I do with the custom weekly practice plan. I think that's what sets that custom weekly practice plan apart. It's what I did back years ago, and I'd still try to do it, is actually break my time down in much more detail, much more granular detail of 15 minutes dedicated to this, and percentages of my time needs to be driving and approach shots, and percentages of my time need to be block practice and random practice and challenge practice. So that's the kind of thing I do with the custom weekly practice plan. That would take you from that 70% all the way to 95 or 100% of the way of making your practice really good. But you should at least get started with doing it, getting 70% of the way there. So you need to practice your routine, and doing it in this way I think is really important. And you could be a crazy practice nut like me and literally go through your routine on every single shot, whether you are raking and hitting, that kind of practice, block practice, working on my technique, or I'm going through some kind of challenge. I go through my routine on every single shot. I take a long time to practice. I'll hit, 60 balls. Might take me 2 hours. Like that's, I really take a long time to practice. So you could be like me, or you could just get some of the way there. But either way, I think you've got to practice your routine and not just leave it up to chance out on the golf course. So let's do a pop quiz. It's something I've been doing lately. I think it's a good way to learn. As soon as you learn this information, quizzing yourself on it, that's the best way to make it stick. So let's go through 3 relatively easy questions this time. So question 1, what is the main purpose of a pre-shot routine? Is it A, to feel the same on every shot? Or is it B, to simplify complex things and be more present? Or is it C, to increase brain activity in certain regions? Okay, got your answer? This one's pretty simple, I think. Okay, the answer is B. It's to simplify complex things and be more present. Now, yes, we are trying to increase brain activity in that neocortical region, but really we're trying to decrease overall brain activity. So that one is a little bit tricky there. And it's certainly not to feel the same on every shot, right? We know we can't feel the same on every shot because shots are different. Relative pressure is different. I'm looking at the wallpaper on my screen. It's when I played the 2016 U.S. Mid-Amateur. Pressure was different. Shots felt different on that day than even the next year's U.S. Mid-Am, let alone a casual round at my home course. So you can't feel the same on every shot. But ultimately, a pre-shot routine is to simplify complex things and to be more present. Okay, hopefully you got that one. Question 2, what are the 3 main steps in my personal pre-shot routine? So Josh's pre-shot routine, what are the 3 main steps? All right, listen close. Option A, is it visualizing the shot, taking practice swings, and deep breathing? Is it B, picking a target, pre-accepting the results, and having a shot feel? Or is it C, analyzing the wind, choosing a club, and focusing on technique? Okay, got your answer? Okay, the answer is B. It's picking a target, pre-accepting the results, and having a shot feel. Now, all 3 of these kind of have elements that could be valuable and might be something that you do, but they are not specific to me. They're not individualized to me. And there's a conversation to have of different pre-shot routines that work for different people. But again, we're trying to get at that ultimate theme of simplifying complex things, being present, reducing overall mental noise, sifting through relevant and non-relevant info, those things. So my personal pre-shot routine is my way of doing that, which is picking a target, pre-accepting the results, and having a shot feel. Okay, question 3. How should you practice your pre-shot routine? A, only during actual rounds of golf. B, by imagining the routine while not on the golf course. Or C, by going through the full routine during dedicated practice sessions. Okay, this one's really easy. If you're not getting this, then you're not listening. Okay, it is C, by going through the full routine during dedicated practice sessions. Now, it's definitely not A, right? Trying to only go through your routine during actual rounds of golf, that's a really great way to increase the mental chatter, forget things, do too much, not do enough. That's not a great practice area for the pre-shot routine. So I encourage you to not do it that way. And it's not B, although imagining your routine when you're not on the course, that's okay. And we've talked about visualization and visualizing success and visualizing failure in previous episodes. I encourage you to go listen to those. But that's not the primary way. You can do it. You can try it. You're certainly always welcome to experiment. But I think visualizing things going well is not always the best way to go about it. It's just like what we talked about at the top, where expecting every shot to feel the same can actually be harmful, because now not only are shots chaotic and different from each other, you're thrown off, right? You are kind of blindsided by how chaotic things are and how not same they are, right? So I don't know if visualizing your routine is the best way, but we know that going through your full routine during dedicated practice sessions is a good way to practice, right? It kind of solidifies it and helps you get into that mode where this is what I do every time. This is automatic for me, and this is what I do on every shot. So I'm solidifying it and I'm going through it on every shot. All right, hopefully those were easy and you've got the main concepts here, but if not, let's summarize. Now, we've learned from the research that experts are better able to sift through non-relevant info and draw out what's most relevant. And that informs the first two steps of my personal pre-shot routine, which are picking a target and pre-accepting the results. And hopefully that informs your pre-shot routine. And experts are also able to keep the mental noise to a relative minimum, which informs the third part of my pre-shot routine, to find a shot feel or a task feel, something along those lines. And then I let it rip, and then I go find it, and I do it again. And this orientation makes golf more fun for me. When I'm at my worst, I'm worried about all the places I don't want to go because of how unacceptable a miss would be, which makes me get perfectionistic and technical, all leading to a ton of mental noise and too much info swimming around in my head. Now, this is decidedly not fun for me. And hopefully that doesn't sound super fun to you either. And I always play worse because of it. And what I've learned in talking to hundreds of golfers is that almost everyone plays worse in that kind of state. So I've developed this routine with trial and error over the years, but mostly I've just landed here naturally out of a desire to do what works and feels best, which helps me be more present over every shot, which ultimately helps me hit better shots and enjoy it more. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mental Golf Show. Special thanks to John Milton et al. For their research paper titled "The Mind of Expert Motor Performance is Cool and Focused." Maybe you want to go find that research paper yourself and read it. I don't know if you're into that sort of thing, but it's awesome for me. I like reading that stuff, so you certainly don't have to. So I do podcast episodes like this so you don't have to. Also, special thanks to Michael at the Divot Board for making me feel like family. And of course, special thanks to all of you who show up and listen to this podcast week after week. Now, if you like the Mental Golf Show, it would be awesome if you subscribed and left a review. It would really help out the show. Shout out to my hero, Bob Hope, who left a review and said, "Love the information on this podcast. It's a great resource for the mental game and been super helpful for me. LG. Yes. Kudos to you, my hero, Bob Hope." If you have any questions or comments about these topics or working with me one-on-one on your golf psychology, you can head to my website, joshnicholsgolf.com. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at JoshLukeNichols. You can also find the show on YouTube. Maybe you're watching on this YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Music credits and links to the Divot Board, the custom weekly practice plan, and a free mental game assessment are all in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Golf Show. I'm Josh Nichols, and I will catch you guys next time. Play freely, everybody.